Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. Chewy, sir, good evening. Did I see lights changing in the background? Oh my goodness, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm trying to get the right combo. A warm, welcoming glow without it being full on communist.
I think you want full on communist. Don't you want like red flashing lights? Isn't that what you want? There you go. My ginger friend. You good?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. I say it's the end of summer now. It's drizzling and yuck outside.
What are you talking about? It's the middle of January. What are you talking about? The end of summer?
No, summer's over now. You just gotta put it in the rear view and move on with your life. No point in grieving.
I remember when I was working in schools, it was always February in Auckland. That was the hottest months, and there were some days that I remember that they were actually considering not having school in the afternoon. It was that hot. But you're right, living in the deep south. I mean,
I think this time last year we had Otago's hottest ever day.
On this day or at this time giving?
No, hottest day. It was like 35 degrees. I'm sure around this time last year, and everyone was like, "Oh, this is crazy."
I was watching. It might have been One News. It was one of the news channels because I was keeping up to date with what's happening in the North Island with all that weather. You know how the North Island has weather, and they did that whole kind of thing. Crossing to Central Otago now, it's a fine 32-degree day. So we have had some of those 30+ degree days in the region. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not picking up what you're putting down, brother. I'm not going for the end of summer.
We'll see.
No, not doing it.
My southern cynicism bears me out.
All right, so tonight on the show we've got a bunch of things to talk about. It has been confirmed that Jeremy Clarkson is a pig. Now I got to say something about Jeremy Clarkson. As a television presenter, primarily around car shows, I really like him. As a human being, he seems to be a bit of shit.
I used to love Top Gear.
Yeah.
Absolutely used to love it. And then every now and then there'd be a joke and I'd go, I don't know about that one. And
is it the joke about the bridge that was on a slope? That was a particularly bad one.
That was a good one. There was one about Mexican. It was always just some ethnic stereotype or some joke about women drivers or something, and it would just always take me out of what was, apart from whatever Clarkson said, quite an interesting show. And then he's completely lost me. Like, you go back to those early Top Gears, like I will wet myself every time at that Robin reliant 3-wheeled car race. It's the funniest thing I have ever seen. But then David Clarkson's there.
So we will work a little bit on just amplifying one more time that Jeremy Clarkson is a pig. We are going to have a look at the next pandemic on the way, which is very much linked to the current pandemic. We might have a look at the idea National has been saying for a long time that violent crime is up by 40%. We're going to investigate those numbers thanks to stuff.co.nz because they've done the work. So I don't have to. They do the work, so you don't have to. Is there other things as well? Oh, there's probably some other things as well. Harry and Meghan, that's the Jeremy Clarkson story. But where we're going to start with the show is senior writer for the New Zealand Herald is Simon Wilson. Simon is actually going to join us right now. Hello, Simon. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, guys.
Hello, Simon.
And Simon has actually, did you write the headline, or has this been
I did write the headline that time. Yeah.
Potentially the best headline I've seen in a very long time. Simon Wilson, the 2023 election is a choice between the best government yet and the worst. Hey, we could do Jeremy Clarkson voices today. And the worst.
In the world.
In the world. And Simon, your article is available behind the paywall at NZ Herald. and also in the physical NZ Herald if people want to read the whole things for themselves.
That's right. You can buy an individual newspaper, and do you remember the old days? You can still do that.
Madness. A bit before my time, but I remember my parents always used to get the Star in Auckland. The Star on in Auckland, Chewy, they had the Herald in the morning and the Star every day. The Star in the afternoon would come to your inbox. Not inbox.
Every day.
An inbox in the old days, Chewy was called a mailbox. That was what they were called in the old days.
You've lost me.
Yeah. So this is where I want to start, Simon. We're just scrolling down through your wonderful article here, but I want to read one paragraph from it. I want to start there and then let's have at it. Okay. So here we go. Straight from Simon's opinion piece. You're talking a bit about the anti-Jacinda clamour, and so you say this. Besides, despite all the anti-Jacinda clamour, there's something far more important about this election. We face a choice between what could be the most progressive government in our lifetimes or the most reactionary. To put it another way, the best government yet or the worst. You can decide which is which. And I just really would like to start there, Simon, and say to you very calmly, what the hell do you mean by that?
So there have been some people today who have thought that I was talking about the current government as being, suggesting that I think it's the best government. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that this election we're going to have this year will be an election fought between two parties who are aligned on the centre-left. That's the Labour Party and the Greens, and two on the right, centre-right, which is National and ACT. There are other parties in contention, obviously Te Pāti Māori, but they've declared pretty clearly that they're not happy about going into an actual government with either side, and New Zealand First has said much the same. So you've got a centre-left bloc and a centre-right bloc, and the fascinating thing about this election this year is that, we're not going to have a majority government formed by one party as we've got at the moment. That's an aberration. That won't continue. We're going to have a government that will very likely be either Labour and the Greens or National and ACT. And the extraordinary thing now for New Zealand is that in ACT and the Greens, we have two parties which have continued to poll strongly, right through the last term. They've built their strength, both of them, stronger now than they were in the last election. And both of those parties have pretty clear values. It's likely that they're going to roll out the kinds of policies we've been hearing from them. They're not going to shock us with a new turn of direction or anything. And what it means is that if we have a government that is Labour-led but has Greens in cabinet and a coherent and central part of the government, there will be a range of policies that we haven't yet seen being implemented in this country, progressive policies, a wealth tax perhaps, an expectation that we're going to move properly faster and more decisively on climate change. A redistribution of wealth to the poor. Those sorts of issues. That's on one side. And on the other side, ACT has made it very clear that they're going to be super tough on crime. We're going to see a return of three strikes. We're going to see a really punitive approach there. We're going to see an attack on the idea that we should have a high-wage economy. We're going to see an attack on a range of the measures that have been introduced cautiously by this current Labour government to introduce more equity into economic relations. And we're also going to see a real freeing up of regulations, much more of a laissez-faire government, much more of a sense of, okay, it's a jungle out there, guys, go for it. And that's a much more reactionary approach than we have seen from any government, I think, for some time. So we've got a real choice there, and the choice isn't defined by Labour or National, it's defined by their partners. And that makes this election a very significant election, in my view, in our times. It's hard to think that we've had a more significant election for many years.
You said in the article as well, I'm paraphrasing badly here, but like ACT's never been in a position where they have had enough enough MPs in or enough sort of presence to demand everything. This one may be different. If that is, are we going to see, like it seems that National recently has drifted towards the right with some of their language around boot camps and that kind of stuff. Is this something that, I mean, I guess I can't really ask you that. Would it be better or worse for the country? How do you just see that? How do you see National having more of a, how would you see ACT as having more of an input into a national-led government through policy and stuff? How would you see that working out for the country?
So if you remember all the way back to 2008 when John Key became the Prime Minister, he formed a coalition government. National didn't have a majority on its own, so it was a minority government, but he formed a coalition government with the Māori Party and with ACT.
Yeah.
And it meant that actually he could have just chosen ACT, or he could have just chosen the Māori Party, but he chose both. And what that gave him was the ability to go, okay, we're the National Party. Yeah, we're going to go with ACT sometimes, and we're going to go with the Māori Party sometimes. And the two of them weren't natural bedfellows at all. But it meant that National kind of steered a course between the two. It was very clever politics. We're unlikely to see that happening this time. It's much more likely we're going to see National and ACT together, and that will give David Seymour and the ACT Party a lot more straightforward strength, a lot more ability to go, this is how we need to see it happening.
I think that's one of David Seymour's biggest magic tricks that he's managed to pull off, is getting all of those extra MPs in and keeping them completely silent.
Yeah.
Like we haven't heard anything from
It's amazing, isn't it?
And considering some of the views that they had going into the last election, I think that was a must. I would have loved to have been the fly on the wall of like, okay, so you can come into Parliament, but just shut up. Just don't say anything to anyone.
So
ever.
What Seymour did in the last election was that he cleaned out the traditional ACT list. There were a number of people there who had usually been fairly high ranked. They were all gone. He brought in people who were going to strengthen ACT in the rural community, people like Nicole McKee from the gun lobby, and in other ways he created a caucus that was going to be dependent on him, and that he was going to be able to rule effectively, and he's been extraordinarily good at that. I mean, it's been a masterclass in party discipline, if you like. The problem with it is, for him, I imagine, is that when he sits down, if National and ACT win this election and they sit down into coalition negotiations, who's he got that he wants to put up for cabinet? He's got himself, he's got Brooklyn Belden. That's it, because none of the others, we haven't heard anything from any of the others. They haven't appeared to have gained the experience necessary. So that's what's happened on that side. On the other side, extraordinary, and it's worth saying about ACT that that's allowed them to maintain their electoral strength. On the other side, we've seen this extraordinary thing that there was an attack on James Shaw and the leadership of the Greens by a group of people in the Green Party, and they had to go through a whole process of, James Shaw was knocked off the leadership and he had to reapply, and a whole lot of other people went, oh, do I want to be leader? And then they went, no, actually, I don't. And Shaw was re-elected or reappointed to that job with overwhelming support. And in the process, you've got to assume that the party was pretty considerably strengthened by that, because there was a whole grassroots up movement around the country where they went, what's going wrong? Do we need to sort this out? And they did. And the fascinating thing about the Greens is that while a whole lot of people in the media and commentators love to say the Greens are in a mess and they're all over the place and don't know what they're doing and they aren't delivering, well, they haven't been in government. It's been a majority Labour government, so they haven't been able to deliver in the way they wanted to anyway. But they have retained their strength. They are still polling over 10%. They are still there in a way that minor parties are meant to fade away, but they haven't faded away. And I think they're going into this year stronger than they were in 2020. And that's a pretty remarkable thing that they've done.
I think one of the reasons perhaps they haven't faded away is a bunch of people voted for Labour last time, and through various opinions and decisions made by the Labor government, they don't want to vote for them again, so they've drifted back to the Greens, I think. And then also a bunch of people who voted for National last time are a little bit perhaps annoyed that Christopher Luxon isn't going as hard groundswell as they'd like them to, so they've drifted to ACT. And I wonder if we talked about this last year in our last show, Simon, what was the biggest news story of last year? And I don't think it was an individual story in New Zealand. I think the discontent or the disquiet that started with Delta and went into that Wellington protest and is still impacting politics today is probably one of the reasons those fringes are getting stronger. And I'm not saying fringes, and they're both mainstream parties, but the further left and further right. But you wrote in your article about being in the Deep South and having some conversations with people in the Deep South. Though I'm assuming you're meaning down here as opposed to the States of America.
Otago and Southland.
And you mentioned groundswell, I think, in your article as well. And your article paints a picture that don't count your chickens. In fact, what you say at one point is it's way too soon to predict. I don't know about you, Chewy, but that's not what I'm hearing from people. What I'm hearing from 9 out of 10 people is this is over. It's time for a change. Let's get rid of, as you say, that whatever her name is. Why are you thinking that this is at the moment still a competitive race versus certainly everything I'm hearing, which is going, can't wait to get them. Let's be honest, can't wait to get her is what a lot of them are saying out. Where's the difference? What am I missing, or what is the general public missing?
My view of that is that there are blocks of voters in this country, blocks of people in this country who are finding it hard to talk to each other now. And that's showing up in politics, particularly in politics. So that the kind of the anti-Jacinda thing, the idea that damn woman has ruined this country and has ruined our prospects, that's become a really dominant idea, but it isn't a dominant idea among everybody. It's a dominant idea in the groups where it circulates, but it doesn't follow from that. But it's a dominant idea much more widely. And I was really struck. I was in Central Otago, and I was sitting around a table with a group of people, and it was like nobody's going to vote for Jacinda Ardern. And I thought, well, I'm actually sitting around the table with a group of people who are clearly going to vote, and they were white and older and middle class, and they are the people who vote more than any other demographic in this country. But they weren't everybody. They weren't everybody by any means. And the idea that there were people in this country who saw the world differently from them, they seem to struggle with. And I was surprised at that because, I live in Auckland, where you can't live in Auckland and think that everybody thinks like you. You know that you just walk down the street and you can see people who clearly cannot be thinking like you because they're demographically different, and demographic diversity is so strong here, that that you're living in a society where there are lots of different competing views and lots of different competing values. And there are parts of the country where that isn't true, because overwhelmingly everybody's the same. And we hear a lot from Groundswell, and we hear a lot from people who know how to use the media and know how to talk about radio and know how to use social media and all of that stuff. But it doesn't mean that they're everybody.
Yeah, I've certainly been on the receiving end of that. The election where National won a few years back, I was very much in my lefty bubble of like-minded friends and comment sections and web forums, and I went to a party for the election results, and it was the worst evening of my life. It was very, very disappointing. And I was just sitting there going, I can't believe this has happened, because everybody I've spoken to, I was living in central Wellington. Everyone was sure it was going to be Labour back in again. And that's the danger of just staying in your bubble.
Yeah. And that's 2008.
It's the echo chamber, isn't it?
Yeah, and I remember 2014. I wrote about after the 2014 election. I wrote about this in Metro magazine, where I was editor at the time, and most of the people I knew were convinced that Labour was going to win that election, that John Key was just not delivering, nobody liked him, had no policies, on and on and on it went. And it didn't happen like that at all. National pretty comfortably won that election. And there was a real reckoning on the centre-left of what did we get so wrong? And it shouldn't have been hard for people to recognise that just because the people they were talking to thought one thing, it didn't mean that there weren't a whole lot of others thinking differently. And that's the thing we've got to know, we've got to understand about politics, that whatever group you're in, it's not the only group. And the thing that's different, I think that's different now in this election, is that politics is much more volatile. We know from our experience of the last 3 years since COVID that between now and the election, there will be some big issues, and they might be global, they might be local, they might be something that happens on the West Coast or in Auckland or whatever, and they will change things. We know that they'll have a really big influence. So, if you looked at last year, you would have gone, well, Three Waters is going to be one of the dominant issues in the election. Will it be next year? The legislation's passed, it might all be over. Three Waters might not be an issue anymore. Something else is going to come up that's going to be really important.
I spoke to Shane Jones over the summer holiday period when I was doing some work for Today FM, because he wrote a piece that basically said, what's in your wallet? That's it. That's going to be what decides this year, what's in your wallet, economical issues, to which I posed a question doing talkback. If this is about the economy, let's talk about that. Who's going to handle the economy better? And if you say national, how do you respond to the ASB saying with that 2% GDP growth, that currently the New Zealand economy is stupendously strong? Their words, not mine. So how do we then look at it? It was an interesting kind of delve into a lot of people who didn't really go beyond, let's say, hearing a headline from Mr. Luxon and taking that as gospel. But that's what Shane Jones was saying. It's all going to be about the purse strings and people's personal finances.
Oh, absolutely. It kind of goes back to what we were saying last night, is it'll be what people are paying in the supermarkets. It'll be how their KiwiSaver's going. It'll be how much their rents and mortgage payments have gone up. And rightly or wrongly, people will go, it's the government's fault.
Yep. It's true and it's not true, I think. I mean, economic issues always trump other issues, yes. But immediate crises also trump other things. The thing that dominates the headlines becomes important too. And
it'll be interesting to see what that is. Hey, now, speaking of dominating the headlines, Simon, you said you'd be cool to hang around if you want to. I want to go on to another topic, but it's political. So do you want to stay and hang with us and talk about violent crime?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do this. Let's talk about this then, because it kind of flows on naturally into what we've just been talking about. Stuff.co.nz has done some work on the violent crime gone up under Labour statement that we're hearing from National. The whole truth, has violent crime gone up under Labour? What I thought I'd do, and we can all just chill out and listen to this for 3 or 4 minutes, is play you a little bit of the audio from, I'm guessing this is sort of a podcast, a couple of their journalists are talking. And the reason I want to play this clip is what they do is they delve into the data about what crime is, and they delve into the data as to how police identify what the crime is. And then they come up with some conclusions. So let's just have a listen to this, because as you said, Simon, what's in the headlines? I think National will be attempting to put this in the headlines for the rest of the year. Either whether it's warranted or not, I think this will be one of those things, violent crime and crime in general. So let's have a listen to what they were reporting on stuff.co.nz about violent crime and what it actually means.
Yeah, so this is actually one of those examples where we went back to National to say, how did you arrive at this figure? Because it's really hard to fact check something if you don't know how somebody's come to that number in the first place. So they came back to us and sort of talked us through their working and explained that their figure is based on, so it's come from the police database for a category of crimes that the police refer to acts intended to cause injury. And that's like the whole spectrum from, like a minor physical assault to somebody getting murdered.
That's a big category.
It is a big category. So they used what the police called
So that's the first thing to be really aware of. violent crime is everything. So from a push, which would be considered an assault, now I'm extrapolating through to a more serious actual fisticuffs and potentially murder. So all of that is now under one category, which the police are calling violent crime. And so now when we know what National says violent crime is up by 40%, whether that's true or false, we're going to delve into that. What it means is that's what they're talking about. Basically all crimes that are considered an assault. So that's where the numbers come from.
Victimizations data set. So essentially, rather than counting criminals or offenders, they count the number of people who are victims. So if you have, say, an assault where 2 people get hurt or are involved, then that counts in the database as 2 victimizations. So just so we understand what we're talking about here. And they found that in 2017, which is the year that Labor took office, there were about 50,000 victimizations recorded in that year. And then in the year to October 31st in 2022, which was sort of as much data as they had at that point, that number was 57,600. They've taken that number and they've extrapolated it out to get like a full year figure for 2022 of about 70,000, which does basically clock in at an increase of 40%. They actually did their maths a little bit wrong. It's more like 38%, but it's kind of in that ballpark. But as I sort of alluded to earlier, the fact that I had to actually go and ask them, hey, how did you count it, points to not like a problem here, but just a sort of idiosyncrasy of how police record and report data in the first place.
So that's kind of the nutshell of what they came to. So people are clear, and I'm not saying this in any way. People know who watch us, Simon, that we don't carry water for anybody, right? But we like to know what we're talking about. So there's a new way of counting violent crime, and it's the number of people that were impacted. So if there's one significant event that impacts 10 people, then it's counted as 10, not as 1. So they did some numbers as well later on in that conversation. I'm pretty sure if they did it by people, like by individual events, I should say, it was about an 18% increase. And they also said they didn't do it per population either. So if it was per capita, it was about 31%. Now, I guess the question I want to ask both you guys is, it is definitely an increase based on then, even if it's 18%, if you're looking at the number of actual events there were, it's an increase. Is that all that matters? Or is it important that National gets this right as well? And what does this mean for the upcoming election? And because Simon, you're our guest, I mean, if you want to have first crack at it, you're more than welcome.
I got a few thoughts about this, and one of them is you can just see the discussion inside Labor where they go, hang on, you're telling me the police have got a new way of counting violent crime that makes it look like it's much worse than it was, and they're going to put that out there and National's going to use it against us. And it's like, okay, anybody who thinks that the government is in some kind of Machiavellian way controlling everything in government, it clearly isn't true. That's not how it works. The public service and the police is part of the public service, do things their way, and governments very often have to kind of manage the consequences of that. This is a good example of it. That's just one thing. I don't know how to put these numbers into the larger question of what's happening in crime in this country, or what's happening in crime more generally. I do know that internationally, there are 2 trends that have been occurring. And one is that over time there has been a long-term decrease in criminal activity in developed democracies, and the other one is that COVID has seen real spikes in some criminal activities during the last 3 years. COVID has undone the social cohesion of society in so many ways, and crime's clearly one of them. And you'd be a fool not to acknowledge that that's been happening. What it means in terms of the larger ability of the government and of the police to manage it, I'm not sure. But crime is a little, to me, is a little bit like traffic statistics, transport statistics, how many people are catching buses and so on. I'm not trying to trivialize it, but COVID has just buggered everything up. Has buggered up so many trends in society, and we have to be really careful about drawing conclusions from that. Yeah. And yet we're going into election year. Nobody's going to be careful about drawing conclusions. Everybody's going to be going, I'm going to draw the conclusion I want to make my political point. So, we're going to have a lot of this.
What do you think, Chewy? You want to jump in?
I read through the story this morning, and the one thing that struck out for me is what crime is included and what isn't. Obviously, they were talking about violent crime and that sort of thing, and it's a very big bubble of how they count it. Sexual assault is not in that bubble, which I found very interesting. But yeah, it's. I mean, part of it is my pure soul just wishing people wouldn't kind of twist numbers to paint an image. And am I too innocent for an election cycle? If that is where my brain is.
I was going to say there's something else that in all of this, and I don't know quite how it relates to the thing of sexual assault not being included, but most police call-outs in New Zealand are what they call family harm, right? What we used to call domestic violence, which is violence overwhelmingly to women and children. And when we talk about crime statistics and violence statistics and what the police are now counting, it's easy to think that, what that means is our streets are less safe, that our shopkeepers are less safe and all of that. Actually, most crime statistics in this country are to do, or most police call-outs, and therefore a big part of crime statistics in this country are to do with family harm. And that's a really different thing from are you safe to go out at night? Yeah. Really, really different thing.
Just so you know, that stuff also went into finding out who has had violent crimes committed against them. And they said, if one person's had, and this could speak to the family violence, 7 violent crimes committed against them, then that's counted as 7 activities. Whereas if you're looking at who is having violent crime committed against them, it would be 1. And that brought it down to something like 15 or 18%. Now, again, like you, Simon, I'm not minimizing that 7 attacks on one person, but that also does paint a slightly different picture.
No, it does. It does. Yeah. But, we have, I don't know. I was thinking about the Pātea Māori Club the other day, remember Pātea Māori Club and Poi A, wonderful song, and it reverberates and it goes on, and it has stayed in our culture, and is one of the great cultural items that we've produced in the last 50 years in this country. It's a fabulous song and all the rest of it. Pātea Māori Club arose out of the close down of the Pātea freezing works in the 80s when the economy was restructured. And at the time, a whole lot of people were saying this kind of closing down of towns, closing down of major industries, the restructuring that is occurring in our society now is going to have generational consequences. It's going to mean that there are generations of people who will not know what it is to work. And the social consequences, the criminal consequences, all the rest of it, we're going to be living with it for decades. And, guess what? It's true. It's really true. And it goes back to what we were talking about before about, we're going to have a government informed by the Greens, or are we going to have a government informed by ACT? If you look at National and ACT right now, essentially both of them are advocating policies that mean a strengthening of the policies that have meant those intergenerational problems of social alienation, poverty, and crime. And it's, I don't know, it's really hard to see how we're going to move forward if that's the outcome of the election this year. And it's really hard to see how it makes sense to talk about crime statistics if we're not putting it in the context of we've actually created another generation of people who are alienated from society and are getting their kicks out of doing their way of fighting back, which is, terrorizing shopkeepers. And shopkeepers do not deserve to be terrorized.
No, it's certainly in my job. I work in retail. We just notice that people have a shorter fuse. They go bang quicker for less reason. It's just, you're looking at 2 years of stress. I mean, if I was to take a really dystopian view, I have big concerns over national enacts talking about, as you mentioned, really punitive policies around welfare, crime and punishment, all of that sort of thing. And the fact that we need to cool down the economy by having 700,000 people lose their jobs. That's not a great combo, in my view. So hopefully we don't go down that track.
That thing of people on shorter fuses, and it's one of the other things I wrote about in my column in the Herald today, that it's really easy for people to be on that short fuse and to explode and to get super angry. And, one of the things I wrote about was that I think it's tragic that there will be no barbecue, government Prime Minister's barbecue Waitangi this year. And that also means that walkabouts in shopping malls and in the streets and school events and so on, they're all at risk of happening. And we've done our democracy in those ways in the past, and it's been fabulous that we've been able to do that you've been able to just turn up at the local shopping mall and meet politicians. That's fantastic. If we're going to lose that because there are too many angry people around, that's a really sad and difficult thing for us, I think. And I think it means that all those people who are with any influence at all, that those angry people are listening to, people who have influence among them, and I'm not one of them, I don't think. I really hope are encouraging people to pull back, to not be so angry, to not treat politics as a blood sport, not treat it as an opportunity to lose that shit, because there's no future in that.
No. I was talking to someone the other day about the James Shaw getting punched in the face and knocked over. That sort of thing was quite shocking. And this person brought up the thing of like, it just happened, that guy got hit in the face with a dildo. Who was it that had mud chucked? Yeah,
so Stephen Joyce got hit in the face with a dildo, mud's been slung, and people used to think that was the cut and thrust of Waitangi. I think the days of that being acceptable are gone now. My own view is we actually have to go, let's not do it that way. Let's not do our politics. I think
there's also quite a difference in the like the dildo thing's kind of funny, but just if you were to say intent of how mean it was, or the James, you walk up to someone and punch them in the face, there's no way that you can spin that as a joke. It's not like you hit them with a cream pie or something like that.
And although the dildo's funny, it's just a rubber dildo, it's not going to hurt and all of that, and it is funny, but turn it around the other way. You're out in public and somebody looms up in front of you and does something violent to you, even if it turns out to be something that's rubber and bounces off you. It's very frightening. And if you're a politician and you know that it might not be that it might not be something rubber that will bounce off you, it could be something much worse, it's really, really frightening. And I don't think we should be treating our politicians like that. I would love to think that our politicians, all of them, including the ones that I can't stand, can feel safe walking down the street. I really would.
100%.
Hey, Simon, thank you for joining us, and welcome to our 15-minute little quandary that always goes for 40. This is what we do. But before you go, two things. Just echoing what some people have been saying, and credit where credit's due. Weaving House got this in before we started talking about domestic violence. Weaving House says, what would be good, speaking of that data, is some cross-analysis, e.g. domestic violence increased during the pandemic. Economic crisis also triggers higher crime. There are other factors to compete with. National twist. So that was just something that was in there I wanted to acknowledge. That's one thing I wanted to ask you. And the second question I wanted to ask you is, my 16-year-old tells me if I wear this hoodie that I look like Winnie the Pooh. I just need some
that all depends if you're wearing pants, Pat.
Honest feedback. that apparently this makes me look like Winnie the Pooh. She says it's like, this is Winnie the Pooh here, and this is like his crop top, because apparently Winnie the Pooh wears a crop top. So I just needed some honest grown-up conversation around, do I look like Winnie the Pooh wearing this hoodie? It's very important.
My honest grown-up conversation is that I think your 16-year-old sounds like a very smart person to me.
That's so mean.
I hope that's okay, Pat.
That's absolutely fine. Senior writer from the New Zealand Herald, Simon Wilson. Simon, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a blast. I hope we have you back on again leading up to the election, because the 2 times we've had you has been amazing, and when the mics work is even more amazing. And I hope we get to do it again real soon.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. Thanks Simon. Mate. Simon Wilson from the New Zealand Herald. Now, obviously, there's been a ton of conversations that have been coming in. I'll leave all the conversations now about the laser pig debate, which is going on for a while. But speaking of ACT and National, is ACT going to demand, I guess, basically saying the finance portfolio? That could very much be a thing, says Simon. Also says, if I was the National Party, I would do a deal with the top party in Elam. Top party in Elam. Not sure what that is.
Elam. It's electric.
There used to be Jerry Brownlee, though, didn't it?
Yeah.
Was Jerry Brownlee, but not anymore.
That would be a reasonably smart idea, I think.
The loudest people are the ones you hear all the time, says Weaving, which is that's talking about the extreme voices, I guess. Kim says Jamie Strange is our MP. He is leaving because he doesn't want to be in opposition. I guess the MPs themselves think Labor aren't going to get back in. Is that something that's been publicly stated, though, or just what we're guessing? Because I would be pretty pissed if I was the Prime Minister and one of my MPs was saying, well, we're not going to win. So it'll be interesting to know how that's come through. And talking about, the Jacinda negative talks, I can see what you've got on the screen down there, Chewy, you dirtbag. All that has to be done is publicly show the worst of misogyny, anti-Jacinda posts on social media with the slogan, "For that, I'm voting Labor or Greens." There you go. So show the misogyny that lives, and then say, if you vote for them, you're voting for that, perhaps. All right, do your worst, Chewy, then we'll move on. Hurry up.
Needs a baseball cap.
Is it, though?
I can definitely see where they're going. Yeah,
I put it on today. To be honest with you, this hasn't fit me until like this weekend. So I bought this 3 or 4 months ago, and it was too tight for me, and now it sort of fits me. And as soon as I put it on, my 16-year-old went, "Oh, you look like Winnie the Pooh." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I think she takes after.
So good.
I think she takes after. Unfortunately, probably takes after me. That's probably the problem with that kind of comment. Alrighty, that was a great chat, Joey. I hope people are
absolutely.
And this is our new time frame for the time being at 9 p.m. And one of the good things about the new time frame is, to be honest with you, when we were running at 10 p.m., probably 80% of the time we had to do pre-records, but 9 p.m. is a much more reasonable time to get someone at the end of their workday to come and say good day. So very excited that we had Simon on, and hopefully you guys got what you needed for it. Peter King is supporting what you were saying there as well, Chewy. Exactly, Chewy. We still got his double tick blue tick. Good on you, Peter. Nice. Two ticks on the thing. Right. Let's keep going, because we do have some other things to talk about. Let's talk about, this has been one of those conversations for me. I've picked up on the Harry and Meghan conversation in the last, look, what's the number of people watching go, but doing some talkback over summer, it was a subject that came up on two out of the 12 shows, Team Harry and Meghan or Team The Firm. But this is a particularly interesting story that came out. So Jeremy Clarkson wrote a piece, and he wrote it. Now, speaking of misogyny and speaking of that, when people are writing in there, he wrote a piece about the Duchess of Sussex. And let me just read to you what some of the things that he said. Oopsie, not the article. Some of the things he said. Oh, where is the link? I have to go find it. About the Duchess of Sussex. I've lost where the link went. Wrote an article about the Duchess of Sussex. That's what I clicked on, wasn't it? Oh, anyway, it's gone. It was a pretty. If you're watching us on YouTube, I've actually put a quote in the YouTube clip, but it talked about he can't wait to see Meghan walking naked down the street, throwing feces at her, and all this revolting stuff. Well, Harry and Meghan have formally responded to Jeremy Clarkson, who sent a letter apologising, saying his controversial article about the Duchess of Sussex was not an isolated incident. It follows an email apology sent to the Duke of Sussex. That's an important point. This was sent to Harry. He apologised to Harry So how about showing your misogynistic perspective when you've wronged mostly her and you apologize to her fucking husband? So, sent to the Duke of Sussex on Christmas Day, in which a British television personality said he was sorry for a disgraceful column inciting, oh, there we go, that's going to be there, violence against Meghan. Here it is. Shall I read it out? Here we go. He said he was dreaming of the day when she, Meghan Markle, is made to parade naked through the streets of every town in Britain while crowds chant shame and throw lumps of excrement on her.
That was weird.
Part of the article that he wrote.
That's a weird thing to type out and then go, yes, that's good. I'm going to roll with that.
This is interesting. The contents of the correspondence were marked private and confidential, while a new public apology has been issued today by Mr. Clarkson. What remains to be addressed is a long-standing pattern of writing articles that spread hate, rhetoric, dangerous conspiracy theories, and misogyny. Unless each of his other pieces were also written in a hurry, as he states, it is clear that it is not an isolated incident shared in haste, but rather a series of articles shared in haste. The former Top Gear host wrote in The Sun last month that he loathed Meghan on a cellular level and was dreaming of the day that she was made to parade naked, yada, 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 yada. The other thing that's interesting about this is he wrote to Harry. He didn't write to them both, or he didn't write to her. He wrote to Harry, and I'll say it again from the very first thing.
Isn't
an apology sent to the Duke of Sussex.
Isn't that appropriate under traditional English custom that you write to the woman's owner?
Yeah, perhaps. I just think it's so weird. If you're going to go out of your way to apologize, why don't you fucking do it properly? I mean, it's bizarre.
It's Clarkson. I mean, that article was so bad that his own daughter lashed him.
Can I ask you this, Chewy? Can I ask you this? And this is probably something for stand-up comedians as well. I mean, a lot of people, have issues with people like Dave Chappelle and those sorts of people. I like some of Dave Chappelle's stuff, and some of the stuff I think is, from a performance view, kind of average. I like some of the stuff Clarkson's done on TV. Where is the line between liking, and let's just use the word, the art someone does, and not being able to consume it because they're a dirtbag piece of shit? Where is that line? I'm talking about in reality for us. Like, if we were to go out and say we support, I enjoy watching Top Gear, I enjoy watching the Grand Tour, is that tacit approval because it's giving credit to this man who on other parts of his life is a complete piece of shit? How do we do this?
I mean, I can only speak for myself, of course, but definitely when there's something that I enjoy consuming, whether it be music or a comedian or that sort of thing, where their views are just, they come out and you're like, oh Jesus, you're a real piece of shit. It kind of puts almost a film of oil over everything that they do. It takes enjoyment away from it. Like, if you like Dave Chappelle early in his career, or Louis C.K. early in his career, they're touring, I would have bought tickets at the drop of a hat. Yeah, amazing. Now, can't do it. I just can't sit there. The jokes might be the same. They might have the same sort of quality, but I can't divest myself from that. But same with musicians.
Did you and I have a conversation last year? I can't remember. I thought I had it on here with someone about Clarkson's Farm. I can't remember whether that was with you or someone else. It probably wasn't with you, but about what a good program it was and how it was worth viewing, sort of thing. I didn't follow Clarkson's Farm. I saw a couple of episodes. That was all right, but it wasn't my cup of tea. I just wonder where the line is.
I know there's a program called Clarkson's Farm, but my mind automatically goes to Clarkson's Island. Are you familiar with that?
No.
I urge everyone to jump on YouTube and search for Clarkson's Island. It's from a British sketch show from probably about 10, 15 years ago.
Oh, it's where everyone's wearing denim?
No, yeah, like it's full of Clarkson impersonators, and there's free range Clarksons and stuff like that. Very, very funny. Total tangent, but yeah. I mean, I don't find Clarkson on his own to be amusing at all. Like, when I watched Top Gear, it was the interplay between those three personalities that I found really interesting. Clarkson by himself just seems like a boorish asshole.
Yeah, well, I think that's true. This is what we're talking about. We won't actually play it because we'll get us pulled off YouTube. But it's Harry Enfield. I'm guessing
Harry Enfield, of course. Yes,
Harry
with
Enfield's
an absolutely
amazing,
spot on impression.
Harry Enfield is great. If you don't know Harry Enfield, young people, you should go check him out. I actually showed a clip. I have a 13-year-old now, and she's just starting to turn into. She's still out there. She was just playing PlayStation in the other room. She's just starting to turn into that kind of can't be bothered. And so, if you've got a child going through that age,
Kevin and Perry,
exactly right. There's actually a clip on YouTube which is Kevin becomes a teenager, and it's Harry Enfield, and he goes from being this kid going yeah, and at midnight he goes and turns into a teenager. It's like, I hate you. So I played that for my 13-year-old today because she didn't want to walk the dog anymore. I don't want to anymore. I was like, okay, thanks, Kevin. So I called her Kevin twice today. Look, I don't know. I think that it probably depends where the line is. And look, I guess I'm, as much as I have opinions about lots of things, there are some things that I'm still trying to work out. I mean, like Lady Power, given his history, my reaction is the only thing he's sorry for is the cost of his career. Completely. I also think that, also Lady Power says 9 p.m. is a great time. Too many times I'm too tired for the 10 p.m. slot, and great chat with Simon. Thank you very much. This is where, because the other thing is within community and society today, there seems to be going the other way where people are doing some things that they shouldn't be getting, perhaps in a lot of trouble for that they are. So I don't know. The other thing about Clarkson is, I guess what I do now is I go, who's surprised? And how many times have we seen this happen on some level at some way at some time, and it'll happen again in the future? All this says to me is he is still a disgusting piece of shit when it comes to this sort of thing. Does that mean I have to stop enjoying him there's not really anything he's in at the moment that I watch, but do you stop watch? I mean, like, we can go to the extreme. Okay, shall we watch an extreme? Here's an extreme example. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Could you watch an episode of The Cosby Show right now?
No.
Yeah, so there's an extreme. Could you watch an episode of Top Gear right now, like the one where they went to the South or the North Pole, which was amazing?
Oh, that one is amazing. Oh, I was actually thinking of something. I was like, what's something that Clarkson has done that I have seen that is just Clarkson that I think still stands out very well? He did this little bit where he's driving one of the less regarded Porsche variants, and he was just introing the car and he's driving it, and he goes, I love this car despite all of its flaws. And he tells the story of having to drive up the motorway across England very, very
to get
quickly
to his dead dad.
Father was in hospital.
I know it.
And as big of a shitbag as he is, that story was cut right to the bone, truthful, and it was a wonderful piece of television.
Yeah.
And I can sit there and go, that was amazing. Clarkson's still a shitbag, though. And I certainly wouldn't go out of my way to see anything that he's done lately.
But if it was Bill Cosby, and look, obviously the variant in crimes, one is not a crime, one's just a shitbag, one's the worst kind of criminal activity. The variant is vast, but you couldn't watch Bill Cosby and comedians getting coffee with their dicks out and get the same kind of vibe about what a fantastic story.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we think, let's take a local example, right? Mike Hoskins writes an opinion piece, and we know it's going to be terrible. It's the opinion writers. They get these guys, and it's, hey Clarkson, we need to generate some clicks for the website. Yeah, write something horrific. We know
who the fuck put that through? Who put it through? What editor went, oh yeah, that's good copy. Let's get that through. There's that question to answer as well.
Where was it? Was it'd be a Murdoch newspaper, I would imagine.
I think it was the Independent. I can go and have a look if you're interested.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's just, I don't understand why they've gunned for her right from the get-go. And people go, oh, it's because she's American, it's because she's beige.
It was the Sun.
Oh, the Sun. Well, there you go. Yeah. So that's a Murdoch hate paper, isn't it?
I guess so. I don't know. Yeah. Oh, I don't. I saw it was quite fun talking to a newspaper journalist about what inboxes used to be, post boxes, and who buys newspapers. And as we're sitting there talking to a man who earns his career off a newspaper.
Oh, yeah. The Sun is owned by Rupert Murdoch. So,
and can I just say to all the people who are thanking us for having Simon on, completely. I mean, this is exactly what we want to do, and Simon said to us before we started, how long is this going to be? And I went, oh, no, 10 to 20 minutes. And we were 10 to 20 minutes with the first part. And then we asked him if he wanted to stay, and he said yes. And we were another 20 minutes.
But that's on him. That's not on us.
Yeah,
We
it's
gave
on you,
him
Simon,
out.
sucker.
Said
All
me
right.
a text to tell me to wrap it up, you bastard.
Well, I was more thinking about him. It's like, come on, but we're going to be here for an hour. This is becoming a long form interview. All right, let's have a look at the last story of the day. Look, I'm interested in the COVID conversation because I feel the vibe in community that it's time to get over it. Like, as in, let's just stop talking about this. But I guess when I see it in the news, we still will talk about it. Long COVID could become New Zealand's leading cause of disability. Did you get that? Could become New Zealand's leading cause of disability. That's a pretty massive thing to say. Let's have a look at our News Hub tonight.
Long COVID is tipped to become a leading cause of disability in New Zealand.
It's estimated there could already be 200,000 people with lingering COVID symptoms, and experts say that case numbers will keep climbing because of reinfections. Alexa Cook reports.
Janine Crossan has suffered from long COVID since she was infected nearly 3 years ago.
I mean, it's completely changed my life. I don't look the same. I don't act the same.
She's had the usual fatigue and brain fog associated with the illness, as well as serious gastro and ovary issues.
There's been some lifelong impact from an inflammatory point of view, and I'll be living with that forever.
Janine is estimated to be one of about 200,000 Kiwis who've experienced long COVID, based on data showing around 10% of all cases will develop it.
If COVID-19 continues to cause recurrent infections, which is what it's doing, it could become a leading cause of disability in New Zealand.
And we just don't know at this point in time. That's what we need, a little bit more water under the bridge to get a full understanding.
There are several studies underway into long COVID.
We've also developed clinical coding, so when you go visit your GP and you present with symptomology of long COVID, that can be coded.
But Michael Baker says what we need is a better understanding of how prevalent COVID is in the community.
The Ministry of Health has been promising an infection prevalence survey since March last year, which would help detect the true spread of the virus, but it keeps being delayed.
The ministry admits the survey has taken longer than expected due to a surge in COVID cases and winter illnesses last year and health sector reforms.
It is a really important tool. At the moment, we don't have any way of measuring the prevalence of infection in the community.
And no solid data on how many Kiwis like Janine are living with long COVID. Alex.
There you go. So it's still something that's out there. It's still something that's serious. And look, I mean, there is research coming out at the moment talking about most, and it says most long COVID should clear up within a year, but it's still there. The biggest thing is the idea that long COVID sufferers. I saw a story the other day. I saw an article about Northland getting some strange symptoms, like through all of Northland for some reason. I also saw an article about a young New Zealander and long COVID coming up in kids. I also saw in the deaths this week, I think there was one under 10-year-old who died of COVID this week in New Zealand. So it's just, look, I mean, to be honest, you all know who watched this for a while. I had COVID in the weeks leading up to Christmas. We got it through mutual friends and it came into the house, and if you get it, it's no big deal. But I still think for me, and I'm currently operating without a mask, full disclosure, but that's probably because I'm within that 28-day antibody thing. I'll probably go back to it after maybe 2 or 3 months, keeping an eye on the wastewater. But I because there are some risks, and the way you can get around those risks is by putting a mask on your face for the 7 minutes you're in the supermarket. It's not really a big deal. And I think if we could, like, if you knew you were going to get long COVID and it was going to last you 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever more, you wouldn't hesitate to put that mask on. That's what insurance policies are. You know, if you knew your car was going to get stolen, you'd insure it. If you don't insure it and get stolen, you go, oh, I should have had it insured. Well, that's exactly the idea about this whole thing as well. This has been a big topic of conversation for us in the last 200 episodes.
Can I remember?
It's not going to be the biggest, but sorry, True, you go.
I remember we had a guest on, and unfortunately I can't remember who it was, but they were going on about how long COVID was going to be a problem.
It's probably Anna Brooks.
Yeah, I would say so. And yeah, if you roll the dice with every infection, whether that's going to flare up. And, you know, I know of people that are on their third infection.
Yeah, I actually know of a 13-year-old who's just had her third infection at 13. You know, like, and that's not saying a 13-year-old can't get it, but, you know, I don't know. Potentially,
and that's because the schools just went, oh, well, or the Ministry of Education.
The government went, yeah.
The government. Well, I mean, you had schools going, policing masks is too hard, we can't do it. And then you had the ministry and the government going, well, there's measures that we could do. We could put, you know, monitors in classrooms, and we could look at ventilation, but we're not going to do any of it.
Well, what they do, and I think a local school that my then 12-year-old was going to, when they, because I spoke to the principal, got the result from getting their air purifiers in. I think there was one air purifier offered to them. They might have done like 120 square meters in a school of about 30 or 25 classrooms. So what the fuck are you talking about? How's that going to work? But interestingly enough, it would be interesting to know what's happening from here forward when it comes to things like planning. So I was in, obviously I'm in basement of my house right now. Chewy looks like he's in some kind of French bordello, looking to be served by some lusty woman from the looks of that color in the background. But I was in office buildings for 3 weeks over summer, and you know, you can tell the difference in the air conditioning. And I just wonder about how are buildings getting built now and office blocks getting built now, if the air purifiers are now part of the things to build in to help the circulating of the air and to make life easier for them. I don't know. Look, I'm not trying to beat up on this and make it like a headline story for us and make it everyone freak out. I just want you to be informed that long COVID is still a thing. If you're out there at the moment and you haven't had COVID and you go back to everything's going to be sweet, everything's going to be fine, and then you get COVID and it turns into long COVID, I know without shadow of a doubt, you may not think back to this episode, but you could think back to what you could have done to stop it, and you would have stopped it. And the way you stop it today is masks. We all know that the vaccine will exponentially help to stop you get hospitalized and die. But every variant, and with a new Clarkson in the country at the moment, everything's getting past the vaccine. But, you know, I saw a stat the other day. I was watching a online news show, and they were trying to put down like what Sweden did and what Norway did, or some place. It was a place that they showed what Sweden was, and they showed a country that shut down, that locked down. Maybe it was Australia, actually. They showed Australia. And then they were trying to take the piss by then going, yeah, but then look what happened, as many numbers as every other country in the world. But yeah, what happened was they had as many numbers as every other country in the world, probably a bit like New Zealand per capita. But because of the lockdowns and the restrictions up until the vaccine came out, the number of cases met up with America or places like that. But the number of deaths were like 1/10 per capita, because they didn't lose all those people at the start before the vaccine came in. They waited for the vaccine. Yep, then the thing went through, but the vaccine provided protections against death. So it's like, all I'm saying, and I'm sorry to sound like a bit of a wet blanket here, but I just want us to be informed. I want you to be informed, to make informed choices. And then if you make an informed choice to be maskless at Les Mills gym and you get it, at least you've been informed. Fair call.
Yep, absolutely. You just reminded me, just a small tangent before we go. Hang
on. We've had two tangents. No, we've had two. We've had two, and that means this is the third, and that's our quota per show. At least 3 tangents. Is that what we do? Okay, cool.
I saw this piece on a theatre that had, I think it was in Canada, that had been refurbished pre-COVID, and what was interesting about it was that it was built just after the 1918 flu pandemic, and what they decided at that point was to build in this absolutely, at that time, state-of-the-art air movement system. So they had these huge big fans built into the walls of the thing, would suck air out of the top of the building, and it would suck air in and put it in under the seats. So it would change the air in the building 3 or 4 times over during a show.
Wow.
And this guy was like going, man, this is better than what we've got now. Like this 100-year-old technology is better than HEPA filters and all of that sort of stuff. We're just removing the air and bringing more air in. And they brought out an air quality meter, and it was like standing out in a field.
I saw a piece on QI. We could probably look this up. We're not going to play it because it'll get us booted. But a piece on QI, and we typically trust QI because it seems to be pretty well researched. Although QI does do a segment every series where they correct the mistakes they made from the last series because science moves on. And so QI did a piece about planes, and they actually positioned. Now, I will say this may have changed, but they actually positioned at the time the air quality in planes when smoking was there was better than the air quality in planes when smoking wasn't there. And the researchers at QI, the elves as they call them, found that the amount of time they had to reciprocate, is that the right word, go around, replace the air when smoking was on the plane meant that the air quality was cleaner than what they had to replace the air quality when there wasn't smoking on the plane. Now, I typically trust QI. I think those guys pretty much get it pretty right. That may or may not be accurate, but that's what they said. So yeah, some stuff from the past sometimes is very much better than what we're doing now, even when it comes to things that we're only thinking about for the first time today, like air quality.
Yeah. Well, put it this way, on a bus, can you open a window?
Yeah.
No, not on my bus. It's just the air conditioner.
Okay, so I should probably say this. I haven't been on a bus for a very long time. But when I used to catch the school bus, you had the windows open up top and you had those tilty ones at the top. Do they not exist anymore?
Yep. Nope.
Oh, okay.
No, it's just the aircon.
Ah.
And that's what it meant. Like, sometimes the old ways are better, if you want to get more air in the bus, you open a window. But no, you can't. So that's why I always kick out my window when I get on a bus.
David's just given us some data, and we'll take this as read. People can research this if this is awesome. No offense to you, David, but someone just typing something in there doesn't mean it's necessarily right. But this is the point. Sweden didn't shut down, and so they've had 206 deaths per 100,000. New Zealand with their shutdowns, 44 deaths per 100,000. So if those numbers are accurate, and those were sort of the numbers that were in this article I saw, what it means is all the people who are kind of going, well, look at what's happening now. The numbers are the same. Yeah, but what happens is what I think is more important, which are the deaths, are far less. I mean, that means we'd basically be multiplying our deaths by 5. Is that right? No, 4. So 450 is a 200. So if we followed what Sweden did, or if we didn't lock down, statistically speaking, we'd probably have 4 times as many deaths, probably, to equal what that would be. So, I mean, if we value life, if life is precious, if we if we want to see people thrive and be alive, hey, thrive and be alive, then as annoying for all of us as those things were, it seems that the countries who were harsher at the start and then released, to coin a phrase, were the ones that, yes, they might be going through surges later and be up to the same numbers, but they're also the ones who have far, far, far fewer deaths in total or per capita. And look, I'm okay with that. I don't know why that can't be a story sold by a government that's now getting criticized for the lockdowns, but I guess that's their job. And we all know that Labor is terrible at messaging. Okay.
Yeah. It's infuriating.
Is there anything else, Chewy?
No, I've done my tangents. I've been told.
3 per show. So each time I will bring forward the news stories and you will bring forward the tangents. That's how this team works.
Yeah, boy.
You down? Yeah, boy. Can you do the LEG thing when you slap your fingers? I've never been able to do that. Yeah, can't do that. All right, team. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight. It's been a blast. I very much enjoyed having Simon on. Remember, if you want to support us, one of the best things you can do to help us out at the moment is tell people about us. The Simon Wilson conversations, both of them, will definitely be turned into clips tomorrow morning. So follow me on Twitter, follow Chewy on Twitter, follow the YouTube channel, follow the Facebook page. I don't mean to talk anything down, but of all of those, the least important is the Facebook page, because sometimes those clips go up a bit later. Twitter, YouTube are important. And when they go up, you'll get notified. Make sure when you follow us on YouTube, what do the kids say? You smash that like and
smash
ring that bell,
like button.
Ring that bell. And then you'll know that. And then what you can do is pass it on. Like lots of people in the chat tonight saying how much they enjoyed Simon. So when it comes out as a clip tomorrow, put it out there. And then we'll see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock. That's how this all works. That's how you guys can get involved. If you're not a part of our patrons, which is fine. But a way you can help us is to get involved and to share our shit. Hashtag share our shit. All right. We're done. We're dusted. We'll be back tomorrow night. Remember, if you're joining us now, no, this is not a 10-minute show. We've been here since 9 o'clock. So we'll be back tomorrow night from 9 o'clock here in Big Hairy News. Stay safe, everybody. If you feel so inclined, wear a mask. I'm not telling you to. I would be a hypocrite because I'm not at the moment because I've just got over COVID. But take care of yourselves. Take precautions that you believe you need to take. And we'll see you tomorrow night. Oh, someone's saying that's true about the aircraft flow, Pat. Well, there you go. Not a confirmation, but that's JN's. Is that?
It used to be much better when you can open the windows.
Yeah. All right. Catch you tomorrow from 9. See you later, everybody. Hooroo.
Cheers, folks.